Rage. Gotta sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, murderous, doomed, that cost the Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death so many sturdy souls, great fighters of souls, that made their bodies carrion, feast for the dogs and birds, and the will of Zeus was moving towards its end. Began Muse when the two first broke and clashed, Agamemnon, lord of men, and brilliant Achilles. Those were the first lines of the Iliad. Kind of crazy that we're just now at where the Iliad starts off. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty cool to finally be where the Iliad starts off. And like I said in my review of the Iliad, I love the Iliad. It's probably one of the best stories that humanity has ever produced. And in my opinion, it's probably the best war story ever told too. So yeah, it's pretty cool to finally be here. I am going to be doing some quotes from the Iliad here and there. Just basically parts I like a lot and helps move the story along and stuff, and gives you more of a direct feel for what supposedly these people were saying to each other and stuff. So basically the entire Greek army is now ready to fight. The troops that were out attacking other cities and villages are finally back, and they also got reinforcements from Greece. Basically a whole new generation of soldiers, mostly like 15 and 16-year-old boys and stuff. So they're all ready and set to go. And the Trojan army is all set and ready to go too. They have their allies together for the most part, and Hector's ready to lead them forward in defense of Troy. So both sides are ready for the climatic conclusion to this struggle. But an old priest of Apollo just had to show up bearing a wagon load of treasure. So when the Greek sentries saw Chryses, the priest of Apollo, show up with a wagon load of treasure, they were probably a little surprised. But when the priests asked to see Agamemnon, they escorted him to their leader. And with Chryses leading the wagon load of treasure through the Greek camp, this obviously made a bit of a stir. Most of the Greek commanders and Greek soldiers came out to stare at the old man and his wagon load of treasure, and were naturally curious as to what the fuck was going on. So when Agamemnon appeared and obviously wanted to know what the hell, he asked Chryses, "What do you want, old man?" And the priest made a impassioned plea to Agamemnon that in exchange for all the treasure from his temple, Agamemnon would then free Chryseis, Chryses' daughter. Now, Chryses' speech and plea were so powerful that the entire Greek army was moved, and according to the Iliad, and all ranks of Achaeans cried out their assent. Respect the priest, accept the shining ransom. Oh, and a little note about the Iliad. In the Iliad, Homer goes between calling the Greeks Achaeans and calling them Greeks. So whenever I read a quote, it's probably going to be Achaeans, but the word Achaean means Greek, so yeah. So seeing how most of these Greek soldiers themselves would have been fathers, they were definitely moved, almost to tears, by the pleas of Chryses. But Agamemnon, on the other hand, would have none of that. And according to the Iliad, Agamemnon's response was, the king dismissed the priest with a brutal order, ringing in his ears, "Never again, old man. Let me catch sight of you by the hollow ships. Not loitering now, not slinking back tomorrow. The girl? I won't give up the girl. Long before that old age will overtake her in my house in Mycenae, far from her fatherland, slaving back and forth at the loom, forced to share my bed. Now go. Don't tempt my wrath, and you may depart alive." So naturally, Chryses was terrified and got the hell out of there. The Greek commanders and soldiers were rather put off by the way Agamemnon treated the old man, but Chryseis is his prize, so who are they to give him any shit over wanting to keep her? And it kind of seems like the Greeks kept the old man's treasure too, so yeah, kind of a dick move, but whatever, I guess. Now, once Chryses was out of the Greek camp, he started praying to Apollo for revenge against the Greeks. And seeing how Apollo is the god of music, prophecy, healing, sunlight, and plagues, that was a pretty good move on Chryses' part. Now Apollo was on Mount Olympus when he heard Chryses' prayers, and when he heard them he was very angry, like, how dare they treat one of my priests like this? So he grabbed his silver bow, walked to the edge of Mount Olympus and started shooting his arrows at the Greeks, basically spreading plague around the Greek camp. So almost immediately Greek soldiers would have come down with the plague or disease or whatever, and nobody naturally knows what kind of sickness this would have been. Could have been anything. I mean, I've even heard some people guess that was bubonic plague, but we'll never know, as if this even happened. But as far as hygiene went, I don't know. I guess the soldiers could have bathed in the ocean. Their water source probably would have been the Scamander River, though I'm not sure if it was fresh water or not. I actually looked it up online to see if the Scamander River in Turkey is fresh water or salt water, and I couldn't really find an answer. You'd be surprised how many rivers across the world are called the Scamander. I mean, I even found one in freaking Tasmania, for crying out loud. But anyway, if that was fresh water, they definitely would have used it. Yeah, I could easily see that becoming polluted with dead Trojans or dead Greek soldiers and God knows what else. So they could have caught something from that, or who knows? I mean, they could have caught anything from anywhere. It's not like living on a beach with 50,000 other people is going to be sanitary. I mean, who the hell knows where they were pissing and shitting? I mean, who the hell knows? You'd be surprised how throughout all of military history, where to piss and where to shit has always been a problem for an army. So, as far as the Greeks knew, Apollo was angry, and they had a pretty good idea as to why Apollo was angry and why he was attacking the Greek camp. So this went on for about 9 days, and we don't know how many soldiers died. Could have been dozens, could have been hundreds, and of course everyone was terrified of catching the plague, so I mean this has had to be a nightmare for the Greeks. And you also have the Trojan army gathering, and I mean, it's a pretty bad situation. On the 10th day, Achilles had had enough. Everyone knew why this was happening, but everyone was afraid to confront Agamemnon about his prize and about how he had treated the priest of Apollo. But Achilles had a plan that would hopefully avoid any hard feelings. So Achilles called for an assembly with all the Greek commanders to be present, and for them to find a way to save the army. So, with all the Greek commanders assembled, Achilles brought forth the one man that had the ear of the gods, the seer Calchas. Now, Calchas was very nervous because he was about to tell Agamemnon what Agamemnon did not want to hear, but Achilles, in front of everyone, pledged that he would protect Calchas as long as he spoke the truth. And so Calchas told the assembly that Agamemnon had angered Apollo by denying the priest's request to have his daughter returned. And of course this angered Agamemnon greatly, but Calchas remembered that Achilles had his back. So he continued with how to appease the god, and in order to appease the god, the Greeks must sacrifice a large number of animals and send Chryseis back to her father. So instead of understanding it and going, okay, Agamemnon instead had a bit of a tantrum, complaining how the Greeks were taking his prize away from him, and maybe he should do the same thing to Achilles or Ajax or Idomeneus and take their prize away from them. But then Agamemnon remembered that it was Achilles who called for this assembly, so Agamemnon foolishly focused his anger towards Achilles and said, okay, you guys can take Chryseis, but I will take Achilles' Briseis as compensation for the loss of my prize. Now this greatly angered Achilles, naturally. I mean, you freaking kidding me? After everything I've done for you, you're going to take my woman now? And according to the Iliad, Achilles' response was pretty interesting. A dark glance, and the headstrong runner answered him in kind, shameless, armored in shamelessness, always shrewd with greed. How could any Argive soldier obey your orders, freely and gladly do your sailing for you, or fight your enemies full force? Not I. No, it wasn't Trojan spearmen who brought me here to fight. The Trojans never did me damage, not in the least. They never stole my cattle or my horses, never in Phthia. And Phthia is the name of Peleus' kingdom, so that's where Achilles is from. In the past episodes, I've just referred to his homeland as southern Thessaly, but I guess we can call it Phthia now. So where was I? Never in Phthia, where the rich soil breeds strong men, did they lay waste my crops. How could they? Look at the endless miles that lie between us, shadowy mountain ranges, seas that surge and thunder. No, you colossal shameless, we all followed you, to please you, to fight for you, to win your honor back from the Trojans. Menelaus and you dog face. What do you care? Nothing! You don't look right or left, and now you threaten to strip me of my prize in person, the one I fought for long and hard, and sons of Achaia handed her to me! And then Agamemnon throws another insult at Achilles, and they go back and forth. I mean, this is crazy. Oh, and by the way, this is happening in the first, 10 pages of the Iliad, so, yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, this was a crazy argument. Basically, Achilles is saying, after all the stuff I've done for you and this army, and how you always get, a big share of the treasure, and I always get pittance for all the fighting I do and stuff. And, everybody watching this argument had to be like, holy shit! It's like whenever two people are fighting at work or whatever, all the coworkers are watching it and stuff. Because, it's been boiling now for a while, so, yeah. And I guess Achilles and Agamemnon's relationship has been a little Achilles probably never forgave him for that whole Iphigenia thing, so, yeah, but they are really going at it now. And I think it was when Achilles said that he will never fight for Agamemnon ever again. I think it was when Agamemnon said to that, oh, fine, go ahead, desert. We don't need you, da-da-da-da-da. And that Achilles got so angry he actually was about to pull his sword out, and everybody knew what that would mean. That Agamemnon's about to die. But the goddess Athena came down and calmed Achilles, so he actually returned his sword back to his scabbard. But he clarified that, yeah, you can take Briseis, but I will never fight for you or this army again. And then he left. And just like that, Achilles and his Myrmidons were out of the fight. Now, I'm sure every Greek soldier and commander was like, God damn it! Because they all knew this war was about to come to a head, and they needed Achilles. But Agamemnon's pride wouldn't let him acknowledge that. All he saw was a disobedient soldier, not a god among men. So Achilles left the army, and oddly enough, he was technically allowed to come and go as he pleased. Seeing how he was too young to be a suitor for Helen, therefore he never took the oath of Tyndareus, so yeah, he really could come and go as he wished. But he had to know leaving the army meant that he was endangering his glory, so he probably could sail home, go visit his father, and live a long, happy life back in Phthia, because he would not have the epic conclusion to his short life. So that would mean that everything he's done so far in the war would one day be forgotten. So it's a pretty big thing for Achilles to give up if he actually goes back home. So he definitely has to think about that. So later that evening, the Greeks put Chryseis on a ship bound for her father's temple. And Agamemnon sent 2 men to go and get Briseis from Achilles' camp. Love to be those guys, huh? But when they showed up, Achilles, basically told them that my beef isn't with you guys, it's with your master. And they took Briseis with them. Poor Briseis. Yeah, women sure they get the shit end of the stick in this war. Yeah, it's not like the men have it great, but at least they're marching off to their doom. The women, though, they get to stick around and suffer a bit before their end comes. So Achilles just sat there in his compound, probably picturing Agamemnon raping Briseis, and he was just getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and he probably got up and paced back and forth in the room until he thought of his mother, Thetis. So he went out to the sea and called his mother. She burst forth from the waves, And he told her the whole situation and everything, and he asked her to make the Greeks suffer until Agamemnon begs to have Achilles back in his army. Thetis agrees to help her son, so she sets off for Mount Olympus. And a long time before this, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena had all rebelled against Zeus, and they were actually able to chain him up. But Thetis came to his rescue with the 100-handed Briareus, who was like a titan or whatever that the gods were terrified of. Naturally, I mean, it has 100 hands, like yipe. And so with Briareus' help, she was able to free Zeus. So he owes her a favor. And another little story about that, Zeus was so angry about the whole thing that he actually grabbed Hephaestus and threw him off Mount Olympus. And that's actually how Hephaestus became a crippled god. When he landed, he snapped his leg and it never really healed properly. But Thetis actually helped him back to health. And so Hephaestus also owes Thetis a favor, which we'll see him repay her later on in the story. So for now, she went to see Zeus and went up to him. Zeus was sitting on his throne, and she went up to him and placed her hand on his chin. And she told him what the Greeks had done to her son, and she wanted them to suffer until they realized how much they actually needed Achilles. Now Zeus knew what this meant, that if he made the Greeks suffer, then the war will just go on, and more men will die, and just all this bad stuff will happen. But he also realized that he owed her one, so with a single nod of his head, the war was extended. Which is a real shame, because this war probably could have been over in just a couple of days. I mean, Achilles is like 24, 25 years old. I mean, he's in the prime of his life. All the Greeks are there. All the Trojans are there. I mean, they could have had this thing out in like a couple of days. So it's really a big shame that this had to go on for as long as it did. I think the Iliad covers about 56 days of the last year of the war, so it doesn't cover the whole thing, but this whole section here is pretty damn important. And now the Greek army has to fight the Trojan army without their best warrior, Achilles, so that's actually just going to turn this, what should have been the climactic final struggle, into just a meat grinder, because neither side can really gain advantage over the other one, so it just goes back and forth, back and forth. And this is kind of the first time that Zeus will take an active part in the war. He's been mostly neutral, just letting it play out as it goes, but I mean, he has to now help the Trojans out to make the Greeks suffer for what they did to Achilles. So yeah, so this is going to get pretty crazy. And thus begins the final year of the Trojan War.